think so. Just turn it down a little. Right? Does that turn it down?
All right. Hi. Good evening. Thanks for coming out. We probably will have some more folks coming in. I'm sorry about all the construction outside. I'm not sure if we conveyed that when we were communicating with you, so if we didn't, I apologize. But you guys all figured it out and got here, so we're in good shape. I'm Suzanne Dane from the UNC Nutrition Research Institute, and I know a lot of you have come to a lot of our programs, so thank you again and again for coming out, and for everybody who's new to Appetite for Life, a program of the Nutrition Research Institute. We're excited to have you here. This is a program that we do twice a year in conjunction with Johnson & Wales, and I think you're going to have a really good time tonight learning how to cook some delicious food and learning all about why it's good for you. And to present that information, we have Steph Saullo, our registered dietitian, and Chef Megan Lambert with Johnson & Wales.
Welcome everyone. How's everyone today? Good. It's beautiful outside. We're going to heat up the kitchen, not make cold stuff, but that's okay. We are making one-pan wonders today, and that means we're going to use as few dishes as possible. And sheet pan recipes, have everybody kind of been seeing a lot of those lately? Yeah? So we're going to do some of those, and Megan's going to lead us through those, and I will pop in periodically to tell you some fun facts about food. Megan will too, because she's also a registered dietitian, so she just has more skills than I do. That's how she's doing. All right, well, I'll let Megan start, because, okay, great. You got important stuff to do.
Well, this is very important stuff, right? Everybody can hear me? Is it too loud? It's okay? Well, welcome everybody. Glad you made it. You braved the construction. It's awful out there. It's been that way for a while. It's going to be that way for a while. So I'm glad you made it. So the sheet pan meals is just super popular these days, right? If anybody ever Googles sheet pan meals, there's thousands and thousands of them. I didn't know how on earth I was going to do anything original, because it seems like it's all been done. So I hope, I think I did. And I hope that you guys will enjoy these. And I tried to mix it up a little bit with some different flavor profiles and hope that maybe that's something a little different. I think the main thing to understand about these sheet pan meals is that you can really do anything on a sheet pan. It's just a matter of figuring out the timing, right? So getting all of those different vegetables and proteins on your sheet pan together and making sure that nothing is burned, but everything is done properly is kind of the challenge there. So the timing is a little bit of a challenge, but other than that, they are super easy. And I have to be honest, I haven't really looked into sheet pan meals very much before this, because I'm like, yeah, I can cook, you know, I can do this, I can saute and roast and do whatever. But it was really great when I did the recipe testing for this this class. Man, I made so many meals in a very short amount of time. It was really efficient. It was really quick. So great tool for meal planning, and I'm probably going to make a lot more sheet pan meals in the future because it was super easy. It was really good, and my family liked them. So that's the most important thing, I think. So if anybody has questions as we go along, go ahead and you know, ask about those. But I will start with I think I'll start with our cauliflower dish.
And Megan said if you have questions, yell them out, and I'll repeat them so that everyone can hear them and so they get picked up on our recording. If you want to watch it again later, always go to the recording.
And so this is our Indian dish for the evening, and very easy. So we did go ahead and prep a lot of things for this. So we've got our cauliflower in our little cauliflower florets. We've got some onion, red onion, and we just mix that with a marinade of some oil and some garam masala, which is a spice mixture, and some turmeric, right? So ground turmeric. In this case, it was a ground and dried turmeric. I think if you have access to fresh turmeric, we do have a couple of farmers who are growing that around here these days, so that's fun. You could just take your marinated ingredients and peel and puree the fresh turmeric in there with it. That would work just fine. But the ground was good. How much turmeric does it say in your recipe? Teaspoons. Okay, good. I thought I had made a typo and said 1 to 2 tablespoons, but teaspoons. Yeah, tablespoons. And you know, frankly, I think I did 2 teaspoons in my test. And if you really like turmeric, go for it. If you think turmeric tastes like dirt, don't put so much, right? So that's it. Just kind of the cauliflower, the red onion. Those are going into the oven. And I apologize for the new oven smell.
This is raw. Is that raw?
This is raw.
Okay, up
Yeah.
there, looks like it's good.
On
On the screen.
screen. Yeah, no, it is all raw. So the cauliflower is raw, the red onion is raw, and then we're going to roast this, and then in a few minutes, once we start to get a little bit of color and our cauliflower is softened, then we're going to add some canned chickpeas to it. And those are already cooked, right? So they're canned. If you wanted to use dry chickpeas and soak them overnight and then boil them, you could do it. But in the name of saving time and effort, we use the can, and they're great. I do like to drain and rinse the canned chickpeas to remove a little bit of excess sodium.
Yeah, and I would do that with most of your canned beans. Unless you're buying like the no salt added, you probably want to give them a good rinse anyway. But as Megan said, it can remove a good chunk of the sodium. Not all of it, but a pretty decent chunk, like a third.
Yeah. And so then I was going to show you how to make the raita, which is a sauce that accompanies a lot of Indian dishes. And generally it's made with yogurt. So it's like yogurt with sort of fresh spices and herbs added to it, and often there's a grated vegetable involved. Cucumber one is a really nice one. But I switched it up just a little bit just to keep it completely vegan, in case anybody in the audience is vegan or interested in that kind of thing. So I'm going to use cashews as my base for this raita, and I'm going to make like a little cashew cream and then add some delicious things to it. So cashews are going in the blender, and then I'm going to take water and bring it to a boil. So that's going to come up. And to my cashews, I'm going to add some garlic and some ginger that's already been peeled and sliced. I like ginger. And then some lime juice. I forgot my lime squeezer. I hope that's the only thing I forgot today. I always forget something. So lime juice goes in there. And then once my water comes up to a boil, I'm going to pour the water in and let it kind of soak the cashews for a little bit, just so it cools off a little bit, and then I'm going to blend it. And then I'm going to add in my grated carrot and some toasted cumin seed, just to make it real interesting. So that's going to be the raita and the sauce that accompanies the cauliflower dish.
And we didn't talk about the turmeric. Anybody heard of turmeric? It's that bright yellow color that you're going to see in those spear curry powders and things. Lots of research on turmeric, mostly on what it comes from, the curcumin, or the curcuminoids as you would call them, actually the components in there is really what's been studied. Lots of antioxidant research, inflammatory research. Most of it is not super promising, but there's a lot going on. So, and you're not going to get those benefits from just eating the spice. You kind of have to, the amount of that component that has been shown in some of that preliminary research to cause some beneficial effects is really in really high doses. So when we're talking about taking turmeric, it's really in kind of a supplemental form, not just from getting it in like that spice form.
Yeah. Cumin seed look like? I've never seen
Ooh. Cumin seed. Here is just a little seed. It looks very similar to a fennel seed or an anise seed, and sometimes I accidentally use the wrong one.
Smell like celery seed.
A little bit like a celery seed, a little bigger than a celery seed, a little smaller than a fennel.
Is it crunchy or?
Yeah, it's quite crunchy.
So when we taste it, we'll actually
Yes, there'll be a little bit of crunch in that sauce. So cumin is one of those that some people like, some people don't like. So we're serving that raita on the side if you want to try it. If not, that's fine too. Did you have a question?
Yes. What's the calorie breakdown that some of these dishes have?
We did not do the nutrition breakdown of these dishes. So I don't know. Sorry. Yes.
There's no calories since we're not telling you.
Well, I mean, we can kind of break it up a little bit.
Yeah.
There's going to be some fat from those nuts, and there's going to be some great fiber and carbohydrate from the vegetables, and some great fiber and protein from those beans. So a nice, well-balanced meal right there.
A very well balanced meal.
We don't need to necessarily count those things. We just need to think about how our body feels and eat the food. That's more important. Yes.
I am hearing calories don't matter. That is really you can eat as much as you want of fruit, vegetables, and grains. Are y'all hearing that now?
Okay, so her question was calorie. She's hearing calories don't matter. We can eat really what we want of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and grains. So I would say that we're learning more about calories. When we do research on calories, we're putting things in a vacuum and we're burning them up and we're figuring out how much is in that food. And then you go and eat it, and are you really eating every single morsel of that food? No, right? You're not licking the yogurt container clean, so there's stuff left in there, right? So, we use that information to give us a basis of understanding of energy, right? And understanding the nutrients in those foods and how those nutrients work in the body. But do we need to be hyper-focused on calories? Calories absolutely matter, right? They're what give us energy, right? We're going to get energy from carbohydrates and proteins and fat, which have calories, right? But do we need to really be super hyper-focused on how many calories do you need in a day? Probably not, right? Your body's super smart, and if we're really listening to your body, like, you're built with hunger cues, you're built with fullness cues, right? You've got that intuition as a human. If you didn't have those cues, you'd either always be eating or you would never eat at all. So really, using those cues as a basis for guiding your eating patterns is really the most important. If you don't know those cues and you can't feel those cues, then we have to work on that, right? It's really not about counting those little calories and macronutrients.
And I would probably add, if we're eating real food, like you said, fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, it's going to take a lot more of that kind of food to add up to enough calories to really make a huge difference on your weight. So you can eat a lot more of that kind of food. When I do meal planning with my students in class, they're just always shocked by how much food this is. Versus if you're eating a lot of processed food or fast food, man, those calories add up really, really fast. And so it's a lot less food that you can eat for the same amount of calories. From someone who has lost a lot of weight, and I probably, I really didn't feel those cues, it helped me to count calories and to learn to do that. But once I figured out the amounts of food I should really be eating, I don't count calories anymore. I know how many servings of what kinds of foods I should be eating, more or less, and kind of stick to that, and that's fine.
Yeah, and generally speaking, your body's going to be doing similar things every single day, right? Like if you're mostly living a pretty routine life and your activity level doesn't change much, you're going to get that pretty standard, I need this amount of food at this time of day. Maybe you go out to eat the night before and you eat a lot more. You might not notice that you're hungry until, 2 hours later than you typically are hungry in the morning. So your body's pretty good at compensating when it needs to account for, hey, I got a little bit extra yesterday and I need a little bit less today. And it doesn't necessarily need the same amount every day. We don't reset at midnight. It doesn't really happen like that. So your body is a pretty smart, complex machine.
Indeed. All right, so this is going to hang out here for a minute. I'm sorry, is there a question?
You want to ask a question?
Is there something you can substitute for the chickpeas?
Question is, can we substitute something for the chickpeas?
Yeah, I mean, you could do any other kind of bean that you like if you just don't like chickpeas, or if you don't eat beans in general, leave the beans off, right? Like you can, this is great with just all kinds of vegetables. And you don't have to do just the cauliflower and the onion. I think it'd be great with some green beans in there. I think it'd be great with peas. I think it'd be great with potato added in there. So if you just wanted to kind of do any of those vegetables with the marinade and roast them, it'd be great. Yeah. So.
You could do like chicken or something too if you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Could throw some meat on there too.
Marcel, what is that?
Garam masala is a spice mix. So where most of us think of Indian food, curry, like we think curry powder, forgive me if I'm wrong, but curry powder is not really the traditional Indian spice. That's more of like a New World version of Indian food. And so generally if you look at an Indian recipe, it will say use garam masala. So it's just another spice mixture. You could use curry powder if you like it. Something in curry powder I just don't like. So I like the garam masala.
Is that something you
Mixture
can buy
better.
somewhere? Where would
Yeah,
you buy it?
absolutely. I go to the Asia market. G-Mart is right by my house, and so that's the market that I go to. And their spices are really inexpensive, but you could go to any Indian grocery store. Would definitely have a garam masala. They might have like 15 garam masalas, so you can choose which one you like. And the grocery store, I believe the grocery store has it too. It's just a lot more expensive there.
How long did you cook your cashews for?
Cook the cashews.
Yeah, how long did you boil the cashews?
I'm not boiling the cashews. I just put the cashews in the blender, and then I poured the boiling water over it. So I brought the water to a boil and just poured it over the cashews, and then the garlic and ginger and lime juice. And then I'm just letting that sit for a few minutes just to cool off so it doesn't explode out of my blender. And kind of let the cashews soak in some of the water a little bit. Yeah, so I'll start on the next dish while this is soaking, and then I'll come back and blend that up. So I'm going to start raw cashews. Yeah, I did use raw cashews. I don't know if it would make a huge difference in the recipe if you wanted to roast them first. You might get a little more flavor out of it if you did. I don't think it would do anything crazy to the recipe. Yeah, go ahead.
If you weren't worried about having the dish be vegan, would you just put yogurt as a substitute vacuum for cashews? You just
Yeah,
swap out those
so
two.
you could do yogurt with some grated ginger and garlic, and then the carrot and the cumin seed.
Everything else would be the same, you just swap it instead.
Yeah, and if you wanted to use like if you want to use like a coconut yogurt, you could do that too. Good. Great question. Okay, so I'm going to start on this fish, and I think the recipe in there is salmon, and this evening I'm using local trout. So you can use whatever kind of fish you like in this, or you could do chicken. These are all really versatile recipes, so lots and lots you could do. And this recipe actually came from one that I make a lot at home, and I usually saute it. So, you know, it's nice to kind of just throw it on the sheet pan. So I've got my fish, and this is a mixture of just a little bit of brown sugar and 5-spice powder. And then all I do is just take the fish and sort of pat it on there. So it gets a nice light, just little coating. And just back on the sheet pan. And this, when it goes into that nice hot oven, it just makes a little kind of glaze on top. It browns really beautifully. Really tastes lovely. This is really one of my favorite things that I make a lot at home. So that's that. And then the asparagus, this one has already been tossed in a little bit of sesame oil. So just sesame oil, a little salt and pepper if you like, and then it goes into the oven. Yeah?
What is your 5-spice? Is it 5 spices in the gin?
Yes, so that's what the spice mixture is called. You can buy it as Chinese 5-spice, and it is cinnamon, cloves, ginger, pepper, and anise, I believe. Sometimes there's star anise and anise seed, and sometimes there's a pepper and an anise in there. And so that was just going into the oven.
Asparagus is really similar in its nutrient profile to some of your leafy green vegetables. So if you don't love some of those leafy greens, you can get a lot of those similar nutrients from asparagus. Yes.
I was curious, did you always use parchment paper when you did sheet pans, or just sufficient salad?
The parchment paper, I always use parchment paper on my sheet pans. It helps cut down the cleanup.
Do you find that it caramelizes the same though?
I don't see too much problem. As long as the oven is nice and hot, I don't have trouble with it. I also do have a stone in my oven, like a pizza stone in my oven, which I never take out, so that might help. But yeah, generally I don't have issues with caramelization because of the paper.
Yes.
What does the stone do in your oven?
Just so you can bake a pizza like right on that stone, and you get a nice little crunchy
You leave it in your oven all the time?
Yeah, because it's heavy. And it doesn't hurt anything. And generally, you know, I tend to like things to get nice and brown, and so if it heats up and makes things a little bit extra brown on the bottom, that's fine with me. So, but
What would be the difference between using parchment paper or aluminum foil?
I would think the aluminum might get a little more brown because the metal might heat up better than the paper, whereas the paper might insulate a little bit, but honestly I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. People get all kinds of opinions about using aluminum foil to cook with versus paper. I don't know. I just am used to using parchment paper.
Do you ever spray your parchment paper?
You absolutely can. Yeah, a little bit of spray or just a touch of oil kind of rubbed on there. It's always good insurance, right?
We like insurance.
Yeah, insurance
We
is
don't want anything sticky.
now.
That's bad news.
Yeah.
There was another question. I asked her a question. Was there another one? Yes.
The temperature of the oven, do you keep it the same no matter what kind of fish or whatever kind of meat you're putting on with your vegetables? So you put it in the oven?
Yeah, these are, and I've got this one at 450 degrees, so it's quite a hot oven, right? And again, I like caramelization, so I want to get some of that color happening, and I want that to happen fairly quickly before the product dries out, right? We don't want dry chicken or fish or whatever.
So the asparagus would cook evenly if, no matter what kind of vegetable?
Generally, yeah, as long as, you know, some tips there would be making sure that your vegetables are kind of the same size, right? Same size pieces, so you want to be pretty consistent with your knife cuts, making sure that things are the same size piece. I definitely would, so you saw we put the cauliflower in ahead of time, so it's kind of a hard vegetable. That's going to take a little bit longer, and we're not going to cook the chickpeas as long. These are only going to go in for a few minutes because they're already cooked. And if there was, I don't know, like zucchini or something that was a softer vegetable, I would put that in later as well. So it's more an issue of like figuring out the timing, right?
And just so anybody that didn't hear a question, it was, do we use the same temperature of the oven for everything that's in there? Just so you can hear the context.
And you may need to play around with your oven temperature just a little bit, right? 450 is pretty hot. If your oven runs hot, you may want to go down to 400. Or if you do, you know, again, we've got like a thin piece of fish. We've got our chicken already cut up into strips for this. If you did a whole chicken breast, you probably wouldn't bake it at 450. You'd probably bake that a little bit lower so that it had time to cook through before it got too brown on the outside. Yeah. So you have to play with it a little bit.
Question. If make it without chickpea or any type of bean, would it change like the flavor or like?
Make it without any bean? Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a real nice dish to have just a nice variety of vegetables on, I think. Good questions.
Great question.
We have so much time for questions because there's like not much happening up here. This was so easy. So this is the fajitas that I've got here, and I went ahead and cut up peppers, green peppers and red peppers, and onions, and then my chicken boneless. I did boneless, skinless thighs. I did the boneless and skinless just for time's sake, and I really like thighs better than breast, especially if it's going in the oven, just so it doesn't get dry. I find that chicken breast seems to be a little bit drier. There's definitely more fat in chicken thighs, but it's not a lot more, right? Not enough to.
And I agree, like, it's gonna dry out a lot more, and it's probably gonna be more palatable if you are eating something like juicy and flavorful versus like dry and bleh.
That's no fun.
That's what dry chicken breast tastes like, bleh.
Yes, exactly.
Scientific term?
That is a very scientific term, yes.
So I went ahead and marinated these all together. I just threw the chicken and the peppers and the onions in you could go in a Ziploc bag or a bowl all together, and we're gonna roast them all together. This is probably the easiest one out of all of them, and it just goes right in.
And nothing is covered, right? In the oven, nothing is covered.
Oh, the question is, nothing's covered with color, right, Megan?
Nothing is covered.
No,
Yeah,
nothing's
because I
covered.
want it to brown. I want to get some nice browning. We will, when I put the tortillas on the pan for the fajitas, I will put some foil over it. And that will kind of help to hold in the steam and warm up the tortillas without them getting too dry. So that was really the only thing I wanted to cover.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Fish, you only put it on one side.
Fish only coated on one side, yes.
Are you not gonna turn it?
What's that?
Are you gonna turn the fish at all?
No. Just gonna
Was
going
the
easy.
skin on the bottom?
Easy. What's that?
Was the skin on the other?
There was not skin on the bottom. You could do, I think, either skinless or skin on the bottom, however you like. Yeah.
Did you cut the top of the fish?
I put it at the top of the fish with the brown sugar spice mixture.
Okay.
I can go ahead and do the raita now. It's cooled, much cooler. Just gonna put my top on there. Put my towel on there for extra insurance. I'll wait till it stops. So you want this like really, really nice and smooth. Again, we're kind of trying to approximate yogurt. So it's nice if it's really, really smooth. It may look a little bit liquid at the moment, but then you're going to, as it goes and sits in the fridge and chills, it will firm up a little bit. Once it chills, if it's too firm and you think it needs to be looser, you could add a touch of water to it to loosen it back up. So real simple there. And then I'm just going to add the raita to my carrots. And then add my toasted cumin. Mix, and that's it. Super easy. My part is not spilling. I'm trying to make
Bigger bowl.
yeah, bigger bowl. Bigger bowl.
Bigger
for
bowl.
sure. Okay, so just kind of mixing that in and it's good to go. I hope you guys will enjoy that one. This was one of my favorite ones when I tested the recipe. But I tend to really like Indian food, so there we go.
That one is the cauliflower and chickpeas.
Yeah, the cauliflower and chickpeas, and I'm probably close to being able to put my chickpeas on the cauliflower dish.
We can talk a little bit about cauliflower, because cauliflower is super popular.
A lot about cauliflower.
Cauliflower is now rice and pizza crust and all these other things that are still cauliflower. So it's still cauliflower, just so you know. There's nothing special about it, it's just cauliflower because there's a fear of flour. But you don't need to be afraid of flour or rice or any of those other things that cauliflower is trying to take the replacement of, because it's cauliflower and cauliflower is cauliflower and rice is rice and pizza crust is pizza crust. All separate things. But you can absolutely use those things if you feel like you need to get an extra helping of vegetables in some way, shape, or fashion. Nobody's going to argue about more cauliflower, I don't think. Unless that's all you're eating, then we can argue about it. But lots of nutrients in cauliflower. I mean, most of your fruits and vegetables are going to have tons of nutrients. I mean, I don't think we need to even go through individual ones because we want you to be eating a variety of them. I think I say this a million times. So if you come to these things, I always say, eat the rainbow, eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, because the point is they all are unique. So you don't want to eat just carrots, you don't want to eat just cauliflower, you don't want to eat just tomatoes, you want to eat as many as you can because they're all super unique in their nutrient profile. And you know, the Nutrition Research Institute does a lot of research on like individual nutrients, which is super important. And then we kind of throw that back out into the world and we eat those things as food. And sometimes things change, right? So when we put that nutrient back into the matrix of the food that it is, sometimes we don't necessarily see the same effect. So nutrition's pretty fascinating because, again, I probably have said this before. We don't live in a little bubble, right? We don't live in a petri dish, and it's really interesting. Plus, we're all really unique individuals. So, yeah, question.
Yeah, I like cauliflower. So what is the thought process behind cauliflower rice or mashed cauliflower?
I only heard you like cauliflower.
I do like cauliflower. So what is the thought process that came up with cauliflower rice or cauliflower mashed like potatoes?
So the thought process is that rice and potatoes are starchy. And we've got a little bit of fear in this society about starches and carbohydrates. And cauliflower is a carbohydrate on its own, but it's not the same type of carbohydrate that rice and potatoes are. So the idea is that let's take the starch out and replace it with this thing that looks kind of like those things, or we can make it look like and feel like those things, but it's definitely different. But my point is, we don't need to be afraid of rice or mashed potatoes. You can eat those things, and you can also eat cauliflower. So that's sort of where that's coming from. It's more of the low carb base.
Why does it have to look like something else?
Why what?
Why does it need to look like something else?
Yeah. Why isn't cauliflower just good enough on its own?
I don't know. That's a very good question posed to the world. Why does cauliflower need to be something else? It doesn't. I mean, and that kind of goes along with a lot of things, right? About being transparent and eating fruits and vegetables. Like, you know, we really encourage parents not to be stealth about their vegetables and fruits when they're giving them to kids. Like, be transparent, don't hide it, let them see, let them explore, let them experience them for what they are. Don't be secret about it, because these things are really valuable, and they may not take them right away, but eventually they will. And you know, they're gonna have likes and preferences just like you have likes and preferences. I know that not everybody in here likes all of the same foods, so we can't expect things to like all those same foods. Tangent being, we don't need to disguise the foods that we want you to eat more of, right? We should just find ways to enjoy those foods, and if you don't happen to like it, then there are plenty of other fruits and vegetables out there to enjoy.
I would say, though, that I think it's important when you're feeding kids fruits and vegetables that you act a little bit excited about it, right? Because I have this conversation with my husband all the time as we start feeding our baby food, and he's like, here, have some peas. Of course he's not going to eat the peas if you look like that. And say, look, there's peas. Oh my gosh, I love peas. They're so exciting. Try some peas. Even if he spits it out, it's okay. He'll eventually eat them, but, you know, let's be excited
Or
about
not, but he'll like something else that is equivalent or similar to a pea, and we'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
So that is okay. I will tell you, I got a whole list of fruits and vegetables that I don't like, and I think I'm just fine.
Busy. And oh my gosh, vegetables are my favorite these days, but it's been a process, right?
I mean, there's plenty I just
enjoy that.
like, and that's okay, right? There's undertones or aftertaste that you just don't love, and that's totally fine. Rant over. I don't smell. Does anybody smell the curry? I don't smell it. Do you smell it?
I do when I pull this out and stirred it. I definitely smelled it.
Usually it's a really strong smell.
I think because we have the hood on, it's taking all these lovely smells away from us. So we're not getting those great smells.
Well, Megan, will you talk a little bit about, because I didn't do, so in the information that you guys received, not the recipe handout, but the other handout with like the nutrition stuff on it, I talked about curry powder, but I should have talked about garam masala. So maybe you can just talk about the differences in, because they are a blend, they're both a blend of spices, so can you just talk about the difference between the two blends of spices? I know you mentioned that.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what it is in curry powder that I don't like, but there's something in there that I just don't love the flavor of. I think it may be fenugreek, or it may be,
that's
it may, I think it's fenugreek, and there's just something about that I don't love.
And that's not in garam masala?
What's that?
And the fenugreek is
I
not
don't
garam
believe
masala?
it is, no. Although you'd have to check the spice mixture and see what is in there if it says on there. But most of the time it just says garam masala, and it seems to be a little bit heavier on like cinnamon and those warm kind of spices. But there's still cumin in there, and there's peppers, and so it's a little bit spicy. It's just I just really like the flavor mixture of the garam masala.
So the flavor profiles are similar. They have a very similar blend of spices, but different.
Yeah, and I think curry powder also generally has turmeric in it, so that's why it's usually very yellow.
Yeah.
Right. So that comes from the turmeric versus adding it yourself to the garam masala.
Yes.
Question.
So I also really like Indian recipes and cook with a lot of turmeric and find that it stains dish towels. And do you have a special?
It stains dish towels and utensils and plastic containers and cutting boards. Yeah, it's just packed of life. It's okay. Makes everything more colorful.
I eat turmeric in secret.
Yeah, no, everybody's gonna know.
Display. This girl eats turmeric. Any other questions before we move on to the next one? Or last one?
We're just waiting for things.
We're waiting for things to bake. We already made all three.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, back on the turmeric, how about fingers?
what was that?
That stains, those stain fingers.
Stains and stained fingers.
Turmeric, does it stain your fingers?
Oh, I don't think it stains your fingers. I mean,
I think it can for a little while, but it'll wash off eventually. Yeah. It doesn't stain your teeth, so it's all good. So our cauliflower, we'll pretend it's done. I do have a little bit of color working on there. And this one, just to finish it, I really like to put the cilantro on it. We have left it on the side for you guys. If you would like to put cilantro in your dish, you can. If not, that's fine. But yeah, so just kind of adding the cilantro in, and that is pretty much it for this one. We can serve it.
how many people are in the cilantro tastes like soap camp? Nobody? Wow, that's great. Usually there's a big
Usually there's very strong feelings about
cilantro
cilantro.
tastes like soap.
And interesting is that it's supposed to be a genetic thing. Like some people have the gene that makes cilantro taste like
Oh, I didn't know
soap,
that.
and some people don't have that gene. But I feel like I may be an exception because cilantro definitely used to taste like soap to me when I first started eating Indian food, and now I really like it. So maybe I just like the taste of soap. I don't know. But I also find as a gardener that cilantro tends to bolt when it gets hot, and then it really tastes soapy. So if the cilantro is kind of grown in too hot weather or left too long in the garden, then it really tastes soapy.
I would say I also was first in the cilantro tastes like soap camp.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but it, your taste change as you get older,
Yes.
and
always be open-minded to trying new things, even if they're old things, because they might be new, and you might like it, just like it.
I would serve this with. I'd go heavy on the raisin. I've got anything.
The cleanup crew for sheet pan meals is very minimal, which is super awesome, right? You have a saute pan out here. Were you gonna use it?
Well, I just use that for the cumin.
Oh, right. So you don't have to wash your pot because you just boil water in it, so you just let it dry and put it back.
And we cheated a little bit with the rice as well for this. And I figured we could make some rice.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
You could do a easy microwave parboiled rice, and then you won't even have to make, or you do cauliflower rice. You really want to. But rice is fine. Yes.
For which one?
Orita.
I would say a good 3 to 5 days. Yeah.
Can we freeze it?
I think you could freeze that one. I don't think I would freeze yogurt, but I think with the cashew in there, it would probably freeze really beautifully. And like I was saying, when I tested the recipes, I had all this food made, and so I just packed it up in my little freezer meal boxes in the freezer, and so I ate this one several days after I made the raita, because I had the raita still in there. So yeah, this was really, really awesome for meal planning or meal prepping, and just doing a lot of these meals, and real easy to put them in the serving containers and ready to go.
We didn't talk about the trout, but trout is not a fish we talk a lot about, but it's really actually pretty high in those omega-3 fatty acids that we talk so much about, coming from like salmon and tuna. So trout is one of those that also has quite a few of those nutrients. So if you don't like salmon, if you don't like tuna, which are really the ones that we talk about the most, trout's another great opportunity to get in some of those omega-3 fatty acids.
Yeah, so this is cooked. I would like it just a little bit browner. For me, I love this to get a nice glaze, but I think our oven probably needs a little bit of calibration because it's new. So at 450 in my oven, it was real nice and brown and looks good. It even almost get just a little bit of crunch on there. But our asparagus is done and our fish is cooked, so I think we are just fine. I just put a little bit of toasted sesame seed on the asparagus, just for a little garnish, and there we go.
And then the only thing that's left is in the oven, which is the chicken, right?
Still have fajitas in the oven.
It's in the oven. So tell us your trick to the tortillas, not making them dry.
Well, so all I am going to do is take my pan and just kind of put the chicken is cooked here, almost cooked. The bigger pieces are maybe not quite there, so we have a few more minutes on this, but I just kind of put the tortillas right on it. And then a little foil on the pan. Might want to allow it to cool a little bit, but a little foil on the pan, and that sort of holds in the moisture. And we'll warm up the tortillas, kind of steam the tortillas, and then they'll be ready to go all at the same time.
Those are corn tortillas, right?
These are corn tortillas. Typically for fajitas, I would use a flour, but these were like cute little tortillas, so I thought they would work well for our tasting side.
And you typically do have to warm up the corn tortillas, otherwise they break.
Yeah, corn tortillas are not delicious if you don't heat them up. So typically, the way authentically you would heat up corn tortillas is on a griddle, like a flat griddle, which you could do for sure. I mean, it's not that much more prep. Sometimes you even heat them up in the microwave, like wrapped in paper towels in the microwave. We do that too sometimes, but nicely on the griddle is really good. This is going to be more similar to a microwave tortilla than a griddle tortilla, where you get some of the color and the crispness on there.
But it won't, as long as it's heated up, it's not gonna like break in half. If you
Yeah,
don't heat it up,
they're real crumbly and they don't
Break
taste
it.
very good if they're not heated. And flour, I like to heat up the flour tortillas as well. They also are a little more flexible when they're warm. So, and I did the same thing. I tested it with both flour and corn, and they both worked really well like this. So they just go back in the oven for a couple more minutes. And then we are serving them today with a little shredded cheese. And I have Greek yogurt, which I like to use as a sour cream substitute a lot, so much lower in fat than sour cream. And you can use sour cream if you like it. And then a little bit of guacamole that the TAs mixed up for us. So it should be delicious.
Yes.
So jumping back to the earlier two dishes, you toasted the seeds in, well, seeds in both dishes, right? So the raisa and the sesame seeds. What temperature did you set your skillet on in order to toast those?
Maybe medium, you know, just kind of medium, not too hot, not too cool. You want to get a little bit of color on there. If they start to pop, then they're good. But you just kind of toast until you smell the fragrance of them. That's about as far as I go.
And the question was, how high is the heat for the sesame seeds and the cumin seeds that you're toasting in the oven, just in case nobody's aware of what we're toasting.
I was curious to state the question.
Other questions? Anything? No?
Yes.
Yeah,
One to ask about the trout. Is that farm raised?
it is a farm-raised trout, and it's a local, it's a North Carolina trout, so it comes from the mountains.
If you were using salmon, what would be your preference? If you were using salmon,
Which kind of salmon would I like?
yes.
I mean, I like wild-caught salmon. It's nice. If I was using a farm-raised salmon, I would try to maybe keep it in this hemisphere. It's nice to know kind of where the fish is coming from, what they're feeding the fish, what the water situation is like. So when you have I know this farm-raised trout is really well controlled, and the water is clean, and they feed it good feed. So I'm not at all worried about using a farm-raised fish in that case. Sometimes when they come from very far away, the standards aren't quite the same as we have in terms of care for the fish, or what they're feeding it, or how the water is. Is it clean, that kind of thing.
And we always want to be just careful, especially with the fattier fish, because they are going to hold a lot more of the heavier metals. And for the most part, the benefits greatly outweigh the risks in terms of that heavy metal content in some of that fatty fish. But that is always, it always is there, right? That's why we say, for pregnant women, that's why we're limited to 2 servings a week, and for everybody else, most people aren't eating that much of it anyway. But that's why we do want to just make sure that our risk is minimized that way. And the nutrient profile of some of that fattier fish is different when you're talking about farm raised versus wild caught. In a lot of the farm raised, you're going to see a higher fatty acid content because of that feed, because we can control some of that, and so we can kind of get a better understanding of what the actual content is. And again, going back to, is that really super important to know, like, what are there a couple milligram differences in between the fatty acid content of that farm versus wild? But I think going back to Megan's point is, like, really knowing where your stuff is coming from and what's valuable to you when you're thinking about your food choices. Like, it's always going to be sort of your own personal moral values, right? No, nothing's necessarily right or wrong. Yes.
What would be the minimum amount of fruits and vegetables that you give?
Minimum amount of fruits and vegetables that we should eat a day. Well, the standard old saying is 5 a day. 5 servings a day, and a standard serving would be 1 cup, 1/2 cup.
Half cup serving.
Half cup serving. Or a small piece of fruit would be considered a serving size of vegetables. Or we're talking about a cup of raw leafy greens would serve as a serving.
Yeah, so you have
It's really not a lot, right?
Yeah.
A cup is not a whole lot, so it's pretty easy to get in, 2 or 3 servings at one meal, right? If you're going by that half cup standard serving size. Yeah.
Are you a proponent of more grazing all day, or eating every couple hours, or larger meals? What's your theory or belief on consumption and cutout point at the end of the day and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so there is no good good research to say that one way is better than another, but hands down, everybody requires different needs, right? I would say if you are tuning into those hunger fullness cues, that's really the most important, is if you're feeling hungry every couple of hours, or maybe you've got some, your blood sugar fluctuates quite a bit, and you notice you've got some highs and lows, and so you want to keep that regulated, then yeah, if you see you're eating a little bit more often. In terms of cutoff time, the body doesn't care what time it is. So if you're hungry at 11 o'clock at night, you're hungry at 11 o'clock at night. Your body is smart. It does not reset at midnight. I will say that again and again. Your body couldn't care less about what time of day it is. I will say that eating a super large meal before going to bed, especially if you suffer from like gastro reflux, sorry, lost my mind there. If you suffer from reflux, that can be problematic before going to bed, so we always encourage people not to eat super large meals before going to bed that way. Or super large meals, and I'm talking like to the point where you're feeling uncomfortable. That's what I mean by a large meal. But if you're eating just enough to sort of be comfortably full, then you should be fine. But sometimes those really large meals can impact your quality of sleep. You may not recognize it because you're like, I ate a large meal and I'm feeling super tired and sluggish and fatigued. But that large meal can impact your quality of sleep because that energy, your blood's kind of flowing to your digestive tract, and we want to focus on like taking care of the rest of your body so you can sleep. Yes?
What is the latest thinking data show around intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting. Well, there's a lot of research out there. There's some pretty promising research in terms of like blood sugar control and that, but for the most part, I would say it's probably not the best way for everybody. I think there are probably a very small subset of the population that could probably do it and do it for a long time, but for most people, it's probably not really a great way to go about it. The question was, what is the most recent stance or take on intermittent fasting? Which, if you're not aware, intermittent fasting is sort of, it can be a variety of things. It could be what we call feeding window or time restricted feeding windows, so where you might only be eating for like 8 hours at a time, or you're eating 500 calories a day twice a week, and then you're eating normally on the rest of the days. So there are a couple definitions to what intermittent fasting is, but essentially it's periods of eating nothing or very, very small amounts, followed by periods of normal eating. So a lot of the research has been focused around like blood sugar control and monitoring or managing diabetes, for example. But I think you're going to find professionals that are said, yes, of course, let's do it. And there will be other professionals that will be skeptical. And I'm always skeptical of any restrictive feeding methods. That's just my personal take on most of these things. And you're always going to obviously have a bias. So if you ask another nutrition professional, they might say, absolutely. All of that may be hesitant. Yes?
Earlier you talked about the body doing a pretty good job of regulating hunger.
Yeah.
And you said, but every now and then if you can't hear the hunger cues, you need to reset them. What's the method for resetting somebody who's just not tuning into the body's signal of your full stop eating?
Yeah, so the question is, like, what if you can't hear hunger and fullness cues? Like, what's the best way to sort of get back in touch with that? Reset is I'm not sure that reset is the best word, but, I really would encourage, so if you're really not sure when you're hungry or when you're full, I always recommend implementing some structured eating, right? Most of the time, if we're generally eating at particular times of the day, stick with that, and then check in with yourself. Check in before you eat, check in halfway through your eating, and then check in again at the end, and really understand, okay, how did I feel? On a scale of 1 to 10, how hungry was I? Halfway through that meal, how am I feeling now compared to how I felt when I started this meal? And then at the end, check in again. How am I feeling on that level of, let's say, 1 to 10, right? Where 1 is you're so incredibly hungry that you're going to faint, and 10 is I'm so unbelievably stuffed that I'm going to vomit, right? So those are kind of the extremes, and the extremes are super easy to feel, right? But that middle ground is really where we want to sway, right? We want to sway like from 3 to like 7, right? We're using that scale 1 to 10. So that's harder to feel, but really giving yourself periodic check-ins throughout the day can get you back in tune with those cues. And it's not just the hunger fullness cues, right? It's all these other things that your body's just programmed to do, right? When you gotta pee, you gotta pee. It's clear as night and day most of the time, right? So if we're super tuned into that, then use that as a as a basic slogan. What else is going on in my body? Well, it's my feeling, right? And notice that hunger can present itself in a lot of different ways, right? Everybody experiences hunger. Maybe they're feeling a sense of physical emptiness, or maybe they're starting to get dizzy, or they have a headache, right? There are a lot of ways that hunger can present itself. So just being super tuned into you as an individual person is important. So I just recommend checking in with yourself, sticking to some structured eating, right? If you're kind of always all over the place, like having some structure can help you sort of tune back in. Yes?
You talked a little bit about different types of fish, but is there any type of fish that you recommend more or less maybe for toddlers, and how often? Is it once a week? Just kind of the benefits of that with younger kids and for us, obviously.
Yeah, so the question is types of fish, recommendations for fish, and specifically for toddlers. Well, all fish. We don't eat enough fish, right? But specifically those fatty fish. So salmon, mackerel, tuna, trout, those are going to be the ones that are, lower in mercury. We probably want to avoid, especially for younger kids, like your swordfish, your shark, your king mackerel, and your tilefish. Those are the top 4 that we probably want to avoid for small kids and pregnant women. But expose them to fish. And I wouldn't even say it needs to be a certain number of times a week. Just whenever it makes sense for your family to incorporate fish, do it. Yes?
Talking about sugar, what sugar do you recommend? Brown sugar or stevia for little kids and for us? Because I have heard that stevia is a natural product that is good, but I don't know.
So the question is stevia or sugar? And the sugar is sugar, and stevia is stevia, so they're different. Sugar has calories, stevia does not. I don't know that there's a ton of research on stevia in kids, but for I don't know that we're using it in very high quantities, so I would say I don't think it's a problem. And sugar, we're adding sugar to things. We always want the majority of the diet to be fruits and vegetables and whole grains and protein and grains. But incorporating candy and actually there's tons of research to say that restricting sweet things is not a good thing. Like if we treat these things super special, then more than likely that's going to lead these kids to overeat and not have a good understanding of what a good healthy relationship with those kinds of foods are. If you're not familiar with Ellen Satter, ELLYN SATTER, she's a great resource for feeding children, and she's got a lot of really good books and resources on her website and stuff. But she will be at the top of the chain to say, like, do not restrict junk food, quote unquote junk food, from your kids. So to just really teach them that that's not necessarily a special thing. Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm looking at your spiced salmon and asparagus dish here, and have a jasmine rice, which I'm not familiar with. And if you could speak on that, and not only that, but would you also recommend brown rice, and you feel like there's a difference as far as ability to fill a person up or make a person feel more full, white rice as compared to brown rice, or maybe a jasmine rice, or some kind of yellow rice? I'm not familiar with jasmine rice.
Jasmine rice is used a lot in Asian cuisine. So I don't know if it's Chinese or Thai, but I think it's Chinese. Use it a lot in Chinese dishes. And it's just a variety of rice. So you can get white jasmine rice or you can get brown jasmine rice. And I do personally try to go for more whole grains. So I do generally try to do brown rice. There's a little bit of difference in fiber content in the brown rice versus white. And I do think it helps you to feel more full longer. But, we went with white rice for this tasting just because it was a little more accessible for us here.
Now, why do they call it jasmine rice? They use the herb jasmine to season it, or why?
No, it has a really lovely fragrance. It doesn't smell or taste anything like jasmine, but it does have a really nice fragrance. It's very popcorny kind of flavor.
And when you eat out at a Chinese or Japanese restaurant and they have the yellow rice, is that because it's been seasoned with cumin? Is it turmeric in that cumin? Is that what makes it yellow?
I would guess turmeric or in place if you're having like a basmati dish, right? Sometimes there's turmeric in there. In other cuisines, sometimes yellow rice is with annatto seed, which is in Hispanic dishes. They use it to make things. It can be really bright red, or it can be just, if you use just a little bit, it can be really yellow. Saffron will also make things bright yellow. Really expensive though, so you don't see it as much. But it may be saffron in an Indian dish as well.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
Well, that's about sugar or stevia.
Yeah.
Some people say that eating non-carbohydrate sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, makes you crave those carbohydrates, so then you binge on them later. What's your thought on that?
So the question is, if we're replacing sugar with non-caloric sweeteners like stevia, does that cause us to binge on those foods later? So there is some research to suggest that. My take is that if we're not completely satisfied with what we're replacing food with, then we're going to find that need to fulfill that level of satisfaction, which usually is the driver to some of that overeating, right? When we're taking something away and we're not meeting that level of satisfaction, we're going to continue to look for food. Even if you're like physically full and you're not satisfied, you're going to continue to look for food. And so I think some of that comes there, but also it kind of goes along with like, what is it that you're eating that has that ingredient in it, right? Is it a Jell-O that doesn't have much nutrition anyway and you're not really getting filled up, right? Or is it I don't know, cake, right? That might make you feel a little bit fuller, right? So I think it also depends on the type of food and what it's used for and how that food actually is able to make you full. But you are correct, like that it may not fulfill that level of satisfaction and you may look for more food, but from a calorie standpoint, it's not going to provide you with energy, right? So is it a food that doesn't have any other calories, like is it being sweetened with stevia but it also has protein? Well, that might fill you up differently than like my example of Jell-O, right, where it's just going to be like flavored water and no calories, right? Does that kind of make sense?
And I think we've seen the same thing with like low-fat products where they don't have the fat in there that is satisfying, even though they're full of sugar, and then you still end up kind of craving something else after eating something that's low in fat. If it's, you see a cookie and you're tasting a cookie, but it's not really satisfying you the way a cookie should. Just eat the cookie.
Yeah, and there, I think there is a lot to say about if you have a expectation for a food and then that expectation is not met, are you better off eating a small amount of your regular whatever it is, or the sugar-free, calorie-free replacement where it's not meeting that satisfaction and you end up eating a lot of it, right? So again, I always go back to like, you really want to enjoy your food, like be with your food. I'm gonna be woo-woo and say like, be one with the food and be in the moment, right? But it really is important, right? We don't take the time many times to taste our food and to really let that food nourish us in the way that it's designed to, or go, 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 right? And if we took more time to do that, I think we would be experiencing food in a much different way. So we thank you for coming, and we have demos out in the lobby area. There are multiple stations, so please don't feel like you have to line up all in one place. Disperse yourselves evenly, and then everybody will get